The Ferguson TE20 tractor, or Little Grey Fergie, the machine that revolutionized farming. Gordon, John and Graham Charity used 6 TE20s on their 300-acre farm in North Cambridgeshire. The last of these tractors was built nearly 40 years ago, but there are still thousands in use all over the country.
In my opinion, nobody could improve on the TE20, and I doubt whether they ever will.
I've got to climb up into a great high cab every time you've got to get up and do something. Smashing.
A good little tractor, I agree.
The TE20 was the culmination of a lifetime's work by its inventor, Harry Ferguson. He was born in 1884 on a small farm in the north of Ireland. John Loughlin farms not far from where Harry Ferguson grew up. His family have been farming in this area since the 1820s. Wesley Lewin was born in 1916 and grew up on the farm in Norfolk that he and his son Michael still work today. He remembers the days before the TE20 when just keeping the horses fed took up a quarter of his land.
All the farms in this area had horses, nothing else, and there were no tractors about. None.
There were tractors available, like the Fordson, but they were large and unwieldy. Dragging rather than controlling the implements, they were only useful for ploughing large fields. On smaller farms, the horse remained the only option.
The Fordson was available pre-war, controlled by the tractor other than pulling it. And they were cumbersome and really only suitable for flat land. And I think that was what tempted Ferguson.
Whilst working in the motor trade in Belfast, Ferguson set out to design a new kind of tractor. He could see that it was the lack of control over implements which held existing tractors back. He developed a linkage system which brought the two together as one machine for the first time. A prototype, the black tractor, went into production in England. But Ferguson fell out with the manufacturer and less than 2,000 were made. Eager to see his tractor mass-produced, he demonstrated it to Henry Ford in America in 1938. A deal was struck and Ford agreed to manufacture the tractor in the States, incorporating Ferguson's linkage system. The new tractor was called the Ford Ferguson.
And on June 29, 1939, at Dearborn, Michigan, the product of their collaboration was first made public.
American farmers were initially skeptical about the new tractor because of its small size. But once they saw what it could do, the Ford Ferguson sold in large numbers.
Mr. Ferguson, will this machine be a success for the small farmer?
Yes, it is deliberately planned to be a success on the small farm. We'll do all the work that animals do on the farm at less than half the cost.
But the small farmer in Britain would have to wait. Plans to export the tractor were halted by the outbreak of war. By the time the war ended, Ferguson had plans for a new, improved tractor to be made in Britain. He was encouraged by the new Labour government, who saw its potential for post-war reconstruction. A meeting was arranged between Ferguson and the Standard Motor Company, whose Banner Lane plant in Coventry was lying empty. They agreed to build the new Ferguson tractor.
In this factory during the war, they built Hercules aero engines, and that contract was finished. This factory was lying empty. So overnight we got a factory, and we got a guarantee for material to build the tractor. All we had to do was get on with it.
The first TE20s came off the production line in October 1946. At last, a light maneuverable tractor was available to British farmers. The combination of three-point linkage and hydraulics made tractor and implement one, and was sold to farmers as the Ferguson system.
If you think of a tractor as a mechanized horse, then of course you build a plough on wheels to harness to it. Now think of a tractor as a ploughing tool. Why not make the ploughshare part of it, without any wheels of its own, and couple it here, and here, and on top here. This three-point linkage, as it's called, is the crux of the idea. It makes every tool part of the tractor, not dead weight to be dragged. A lever at the driver's side operates a hydraulic pump to raise or lower the tool, so you can plough at any depth at a touch of the lever.
The impact of the new tractor was dramatic. Farmers were able to work faster and more efficiently. The TE20 could plough in an hour what had taken a horse the whole day. When Theo Roberts returned from national service to his family's farm in 1947, the TE20 had recently been launched. He persuaded his father to buy one and still uses the tractor today.
The TE20 we bought was the first one that came to North Wales. The first time I used the TE20, I thought it was very, very manoeuvrable, very light to operate and very convenient. Ploughing was the first job we did. The convenience of the Ferguson hydraulic system made it work much lighter than ploughing with horses. The field I'm ploughing now with the horse would have taken about 4 days. But with the tractor, it'll probably take me 1 day. Such stony ground, still the best tractor out.
I was, I suppose, about 11 years old when the first grey Fergie came to my home farm. But I'd learned to drive a Ferguson prior to that.
The main course, which takes 10 days, is divided between work in the field and in the classroom. It deals with both theory and practice. Many of the students are, of course, already familiar with the basic operations of tractor handling and driving. But others have to begin right at the beginning. They must be able, when necessary, to advise farmers on how to make the best use of tractor and implements, and how to get the full advantage of their flexibility.
I went to the demonstration and I was rather impressed that day, and I had a few rounds of ploughing, you see.
The whole object of the exercise was to get them interested, giving them practical demonstrations. Seeing is believing. See it working.
The centerpiece of a demonstration was cultivating the small square. This was an area 20 feet by 27 feet, too small for a horse or any other tractor to work in.
I think they were heroes, a lot of these farmers, because they had no idea of gears, they had no idea of changing their gears.
We make sure that the driver is conversant with all the controls, and then he tries his hand at driving for the first time.
Ferguson service was extensive. When farmers bought a TE20, the dealer came with it to make sure they knew what they were doing.
I'm one of the many thousands who farm the Ferguson way. It isn't just a case of being sold a tractor and then leaving it at that. It's the kind of service we get afterwards that's important to us, chap.
Wesley passed his test first time. He has been farming with the same TE20 he bought in 1947 ever since.
When we got the tractor, it was like a new world. I mean,
The TE20 dominated the market. None of Ferguson's competitors had anything to match it. By 1951, the factory had reached peak production, building 325 tractors a day, 74,000 in that year alone.
At one time it was called the Grey Menace by some of the other tractor manufacturers because they were selling more Fergusons than any other make, I should think.
Ferguson had always intended that farmers all over the world should benefit from his system. By the mid-1950s, the TE20 was being used in over 160 countries.
70% of the 74,000 tractors turned out by Ferguson's last year were exported. These tractors are now working at all sorts of jobs in many different countries.
As tractor sales grew, so did the sales of implements. Only Ferguson tools would fit the integrated system, and a whole new range of farm machinery had to be developed for the TE20.
Ploughing's only one job on the farm. An agricultural machine worth its petrol must do all the others too, better than a horse or a mechanical horse. A horse can't saw up logs. The tractor can, and dig post holes. There are 20 tools for 20 different jobs the tractor can do. Efficient mechanization has come to the farm.
It wasn't just simply the tractor that had the big impact. The tractor...
Dick Dowdswell spent thousands of hours at the wheel of the TE20 without cultivating anything at all.
On the TE20 I was a field tester. I tested about 30 or 40 different implements, but then there was always modifications being made. So all the time you were testing modifications as well as new implements. The job of testing was to drive the tractor as hard as possible over as rougher conditions within practical farming use. Nobody was quite as hard as I was on the machinery. I think that if anything was going to break, I managed to make it break, you know. I had ways of thinking up hard jobs for them.
He was destructive. He would just laugh at you and say, well, I broke it.
I don't think Mr. Patterson worried too much, but he used to sort of call me the wrecker. But I think he was joking more than serious, you know.
If you wanted something to be tested for 1,000 hours, put Dick on it.
The uses of the TE20 went beyond farming. A range of 60 different implements took the tractor to places it had never been before. Playing fields, building sites, road construction.
The roller is chain-driven from the power unit's rear wheels and steered through an independent system. When the power unit is required elsewhere, it is a matter of minutes to disconnect.
In 1953, Harry Ferguson, by now nearly 70, sold out to the Canadian firm Massey Harris. Just 2 years later, production of the TE20 came to an end. In 10 years, over 500,000 tractors had been made, more than any other single British model before or since. The 1960s saw the end of the TE20 era. Farms were getting larger, so tractors did too. All over the country, farmers replaced their 26 horsepower Fergies with new tractors of up to 100 horsepower. The company is still at Banner Lane and has never ceased tractor production in nearly 50 years. The cheapest of the modern Massey Fergusons is now around £11,000. A single rear wheel costs more than the original TE20.
If you look closely at the TE20 and look at any other make of tractor, you'll find all the TE20 features are included there. You've still got the Ferguson 3-point linkage, the same system. No matter how much they've developed in 50 years, big brother, little brother, whatever, TE20 is daddy.
This legacy is acknowledged at the plant. The first TE20 ever made dominates the entrance of the building as its inventor looks on. A plaque commemorates its achievement.
The interesting thing is that the Ferguson system, in some form or other, is employed by every tractor maker in the world today.
On John Laughlin's farm, new and old coexist. Modern tractors do most of the work, but he still keeps a TE20 for smaller jobs.